All right, guys, hope you're doing good. I am Rob Foster, and today my guest is a guitar player and teacher here in town, Rod Fleeman. How you doing?
Hey, Rob. Good.
Thanks for coming, man.
Sure, thanks for having me.
I have so many people in town that when I mention your name, they go, "Oh God," like I just really, really well respected player in town. I've heard from 100 people at least, good musicians in town. So
Thank you. Thank you.
From me from the community through me, we all say thank you for sharing your music with us.
Sure. I love being in Kansas City. It's my hometown, and it's got a lot of roots here.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah, you really play with all sorts of, I know my parents come a lot to come and hear you with the jazz orchestra.
Yes,
a little bit.
Yeah, that's been a great experience to be part of that. It's wonderful.
Have you done very much like big band stuff like that, or has it been a lot of combo band kind of stuff?
Well, back in the '80s, I left the band. I was in the band Dry Jack, and came back to Kansas City and started working. And that was kind of like the tail end of big bands were still doing a lot of country club gigs. So I did a lot of what would be more like dance band, big band things with Steve Miller in particular and Vince Bilardo. So I did a lot of that, but yeah, I've been playing in big bands since I was in high school. Really.
Yeah, I always found that funny with the keyboard and guitar and big band, because you got all this stuff going on. I mean, 12 horn players or whatever it is, like
it's easy if it's a Freddie Green kind of thing. If you're doing more of a traditional swinging thing, then the guitar can just be that force, and then the piano can be the more like the spice. And
sure.
But yeah, sometimes it's just better to just take turns. Just sort of you comp behind one soloist and the piano player comp behind another one. So.
Sure, yeah. Well, you talked just a second ago about your younger days. What's kind of something, maybe give us a a minute or two history lesson of how you started. And
I think if I might not even be a musician today if it hadn't been for this one thing that happened. I was in Southwest High School, and my best friend, we didn't have any classes together. We had had classes in middle school at Bingham, but I said, "Oh man, we don't have any classes together." He said, "Well, why don't you sign up for the B band?" Because he played clarinet. And I said, "Well, I play guitar. They're not going to use a guitar in the B band." And he said, "Well, just tell me to play drums." so I was kind of a fraud to begin with, with that. So, but I did tell the band director, George Alter, and
you can fake drums.
Yeah, I said to him, I specialize in rhythm guitar. I said. So I said I could probably handle the drums. And I was surprised he didn't just say, "Hey, go take some lessons and come back." But he brought me in. And of course, I didn't know. I got demoted to from the drums. I got demoted to bass drum. Then I got demoted to hand cymbal. And I had one thing to do in this whole piece, just at this right time, go clash. Yep. And of course, I missed it. and George was very funny. He had a very dry sense of humor, and the eyebrow that could go up at a 45-degree angle. And he said, "Fleeman, take those home and practice." Yeah, that's where everybody kind of laughed. But that
31 note.
But this was a turning point for me, because I was walking out of the room, and I was kind of dejected, And he said, "Fleeman, what kind of guitar do you play?" Because he knew I played guitar. I said to him, I said, "Mr. Alter," I said, "I've taken lessons on guitar, and I'm much better on guitar. Couldn't you use a guitar in the marching band?" And of course he said, "I need that like a hole in the head."
You're right.
And so I'm walking out, and as I'm walking out, he says, what kind of guitar do you play?" And I said, "Gibson." He said, "No, what style?" And at that point, I thought, if I tell him the truth, if I say rock, he's going to probably, the eyebrow's going to go up, and he's going to say figures.
Yeah.
So I just thought to myself, I got to say something better than that. So I said jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I just pulled it out of the thin air. He said, really? Come here. So he takes me into the office. He shows me these charts. And I'm looking at, GMAJ7. And I'm like, oh, no, And he said, I want you to stick around, and listen to the band's going to rehearse now. So these guys come in. Most of them were seniors. And of course, I've been listening to this horror. I was the B band, and I was the worst one in the bunch, but so out of tune. And so I don't know what it was, but they came in and they started playing a bassy tune. And it was at that moment, it was just like the light bulb came on over my head like a cartoon. And I just thought, I got to get into this band. It was almost like I almost knew that I was going to be a musician. At that point, I knew that this was my direction.
Right.
And so I was taking some lessons from Rich Roberts. And Rich had actually been trying to get me to learn. Don Winslow was a great guitar player in Kansas City back in those days. And Don had done a really nice solo guitar arrangement, guitar melody, chord of Misty. And he'd been trying to teach this to me. So I call up I call him up and I say, I need an emergency lesson. I have to be able to play Misty by Monday.
It's emergency.
Emergency lesson. And so he had me come in, and he got this book, the Mickey Baker Jazz Guitar Chord book, so I could start trying to learn these new shapes. And
I need to play Donna Lee in an hour.
Yeah, right. I know. That's like really like. So I went in on Monday, and I struggled through Misty, and I read through a couple of the charts, and I got into the band, and it was just and all of a sudden now I'm picking these guys' brains like, what do I do? What do I do? Get Downbeat magazine. Subscribe to Downbeat. You got to buy this record. You got to listen to this. So I was on my journey, and it was just one of those circumstances where George Alter, he was desperate because he had a really good band, and we the possibility of taking first place in the state competition.
Yeah.
But the piano player had graduated the year before, and he couldn't find anybody to play piano. So the rhythm section was bass and drums.
Yeah, he needed a chord.
So he needed a chord instrument. So he was desperate, but that changed everything. Was being able to be in that situation and be, working on becoming, and I did get promoted to the marching band, which now I'm playing bass drum with the marching band, but I took up saxophone. I took up alto sax, kind of on the recommendation. Somebody said, well, brass, it takes longer to get an embouchure. Saxophone, you could get, you can.
Sax is easy.
Yeah, well,
you'll be fine.
But but I really did. I worked really hard. I made the band first chair in the marching band and played a little bit sometimes with the jazz band.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You said a couple things there. One, you were talking about, I think with little kids, you were listening to the terrible band, where everybody's out of tune, and then you go hear like Count Basie's orchestra or a really good band or whatever, and a lot of kids don't understand what it could be, but you do, like as a teacher. The teacher, I'm like, man, you're playing Twinkle and Lightly Row, you're playing these, kind of pitiful songs, and they're great and all, but, have you ever heard, and then, so that's tough to, kind of the only way to do it is you got to play it for them, right?
Right.
Because they're never going to know unless you put on the record or take them to the concert.
Precisely.
Or, that sounded like that had a huge, like you said, that had a huge influence of just hearing it.
The moment it was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want, And then I went to some jazz camps, which now I teach at jazz camps, but that's how I got my first exposure.
I came to Kansas, your guys' camp one year, and Doug was there, and Everett, and
yes.
Mike Ning, I think, was there. And,
that's right. And so my first jazz camp was in Drury. No, not Drury. Where was it? Anyway, it was a bit of a drive, like in Illinois, I think. But it was a national stage band camp, is what they called it, and my improv teacher was Jamie Ebersol.
Wow.
And he had just come out with his first play along record. You know?
When would that have been?
Well, it's like let's see,
early
60s.
80s or something?
No. So I'm talking like late 60s.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, and so I got the record, bought it from him, and that's where I kind of call myself a first generation Jamie Ebersol jazz baby, because I had that first record, and that's when I started to learn about the Dorian mode and proceeded to kind of start down that path.
Was so coming from the rock kind of stuff going into the jazz, was there anything really particularly hard for you about that, or what?
Everything.
like the technique of it, because I know a lot of people talk about you get these 5-chord rock tunes and then you dive into jazz.
Like all of a sudden I'm reading these big band charts and there's a different chord sometimes on every beat,
right?
And I'm trying to learn these shapes for the first time, and so but I developed a very it was a very cool technique I developed. I would get lost, because it was inevitable that I was going to get lost. And then I'd turn the guitar all the way off and keep moving my hands around. And then at the very end, when it was obvious that this was the end of the song, I'd pop out of the weeds and I'd turn the guitar up and da-da. So it took a while to get up to speed, but boy, that was quite an experience, and really got me going. And then when I was a senior, the second big kind of epiphany for me was to study with John Elliott. And John was kind of like, he was just known as the guy that everyone took lessons from. He played piano. He's a great piano player and arranger, but he taught. It didn't matter what instrument you played. You learned jazz theory from John Elliott, and he made you do it on piano too. And so that was before I went to school at Utah. I was going to Utah because they had a jazz guitar program, a jazz program, and so studied with John, and I was a complete failure. I guess I'm being honest with the bumps along the way.
Man, they're important.
John was incredible, and of course, with John, he was like everything was very thorough, and he didn't start you, he started everybody at the same place. Like, here's the key circle.
Right.
Here's the sharps and flats, and I remember at the time I was sort of. I'd been to 2 jazz camps, and I thought I knew my stuff pretty well. And I kind of felt like, well, I'm ready for a steak dinner. I'm getting, some baby food, And so I didn't take those lessons serious enough. And yet John somehow, of course, he was not happy when I was there, and but he kept giving me something new every week, and I just kept going down the hill, and but at the end, my last lesson with him, I thought maybe I'd get a pat on the back, or no, it was just kind of like, bye, get out of here, yeah. And so I was really, it was hard, and I got to Utah, and a great program. Dr. William Fowler was head of the program, and he was teaching the jazz theory. And the very first lesson was not like John, not talking about the key circle. It was talking about tetrachords. Well, I love tetrachords. I think that's a great concept. And pre-John Elliott, I would have been, wow, this is it, man. We're getting into the stuff right off the bat.
Right.
But I was wiser, and I thought to myself, I looked around the room and I thought, man, we should be talking about the key circle. And that's when when I thought, if I'm going to learn anything this year, at least in this class, that I really needed to bear down and work on the John Elliott stuff. I needed to, and believe me, I love Dr. Wim Fowler. He was a wonderful teacher and a wonderful educator, and had a great program, and I learned so much there. But I spent the rest of that year really working on spellings, knowing my spellings of triads and scales, and because guitar, really it's kind of an easy instrument to cheat on. we tend to, as guitar players, we learn patterns and we learn fingering. Like we learn this is the shape for this chord, or we learn a scale across the neck. You know, where I'm going like maybe 2-4, 1-2-4, 1-3-4.
Right.
Then you just move that down the neck like an elevator.
Yeah.
And you think you know your scales, but what you know is 2-4, 1-2-4, 1-3-4.
Right. Yeah.
You really
Right.
So I really did spend that year working hard on that. The jazz program then moved from University of Utah to a private college because there had been so much friction between the school and the jazz program and that they decided to move it. I thought, you know, I learned a lot in that year, but I thought I want to go back to Kansas City and I want to get a gig.
Yeah.
And I want to
try all this stuff out.
Yeah, I want to be able to put this stuff into motion. Well, not knowing how incredibly hard that is. You know, 'cause I was 19, and guitar was kind of a luxury item back then. You know, a lot of guitar players doubled on electric bass because they couldn't find guitar work.
Wow.
And I was home, living down in my parents' basement, and I was home about 2 weeks maybe at the most, and a friend, Carrick Mustian, taught guitar at the tune shop, and I used to teach there. And anyway, he called up and said, "Hey, we're having a little get together with this guitarist, John Thies, JT, people call him JT." And so we went over to his house, and we played a little bit, listened to some records, and he said, "Man, you want to go hear this guitar player? He's really good. He's playing with this organ trio at a place called the Wild Hawker." And so I said, "Sure, I guess so." So we went. There was a private club. It was just on the back in those days, Kansas was very dry.
Yeah.
But they did have private clubs, and so this club was basically where the Quick Trip is now on Southwest Boulevard, the bottom of Signal Hill.
Yeah.
There's a Quick Trip there. That's where the Wild Hawker used to be. So I go there with him, and we go in, and Hattie Hatfield, the owner, he was like 600 pounds, big man. And he said, "I need to see your ID, son," you know, and I said, "Well, I don't have it with me," and he said, "Well, I can't let you in." So I'm kind of frozen there, and I said to JT, "Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I have to leave." And he said, "Well, they're playing their break song. I recognize they're playing the Sidewinder. That's their break song, so I'll bring Rob back to meet you." So I'm feeling kind of, you know, like, okay. So Rob comes back and he says, "It's a good chair. Are you interested?" "It's a good chair." I'm going, "Chair? What chair?" I didn't know the musical term for it's a good gig, you know. And he said, "I can't guarantee anything, but this is my last night, and I'll recommend you to Greg, because I hear you could play." Okay. JT, I guess, blew some smoke about it.
Wow.
And so I'm like, wow, you know. And so I call up Greg the next day, and this is my, you know, sort of like my third epiphany, you know, moment, because he said, "Well, I've hired a bass player to fill out the group for the weekend, but if you'll play Friday and Saturday for free, it'll give me a chance to, you know, give us all a chance to hear each other and know whether or not it'll work."
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and the gig was started at 11 o'clock, and went to 3 p.m.
Wow.
3 a.m.
Yeah. Late gig.
6 nights a week.
Yeah.
6 nights a week.
Yeah.
And so I wound up getting the gig, and of course the revelation there was I had been doing so much, you know, everything I did was sort of oriented towards big band. You know, high school was big band. I played in the big band at Utah. I was used to having music in front of me. So I get to the gig with Greg, and I said, "Well, excuse me, Mr. Rhines, where are the charts?" And he just laughed. He said, "We don't have any music. Greg's blind." And you know, and he's, you know, "We don't have any music." And I thought, that's why Dr. William Fowler always gave us a song every week to learn. That's why. And of course I didn't do it.
Right.
But that's when I realized, oh, you have to know a lot of songs to be able to be a musician.
Now you're getting flashbacks, you know, of the previous teachers. You said the other guy that didn't do the guy that didn't do the circle of fifths, right? You had another flashback there of all these previous things.
So I had prepared I had worked hard on the John Elliott system, and that helped me. But I was watching. I had to take piano lessons at Utah too, so I had enough piano skills that I could watch Greg's left hand as he was playing the bass lines, and so I'm watching. Okay, he's playing a C there. Okay, take a guess, major or minor, that kind of thing. And but it was a struggle. I mean, for a while, it seemed like every night I went to work, I got sick to my stomach before we played.
Wow.
Because I was just nervous,
Right.
and the other thing that was really good, but intense was from 11 to 1, there was no pressure at all because nobody was there.
Oh, wow.
But at 1 o'clock, this is back in the days when all the clubs in Kansas City nothing stayed open past
Right.
1:30 or whatever. Everyone had to be out, and so because this club was just on the other side, it was at 1 o'clock when all the clubs closed on the Missouri side. Everybody came to the Wild Hawkers. So from 1 to 3, it was a big party.
Yeah.
And I came to realize, a lot of the people in here are musicians because they just got off work.
Yeah.
So John Elliott would come in with his trio.
That's fun.
They got off work and they'd come down and have a drink and check out the music. And that was I'd been playing for a little while, so I was starting to get my feet wet, and I was starting to kind of get with it, And John Elliott came in. And of course, the last time I'd seen John was, the goodbye look. And so John came in and he sees me and he hears me and he smiled like, like he didn't expect that.
I bet that made him feel great.
Well, it did, and it made me feel great because I asked if I could take lessons with him, and he took me back. And then of course it was like a totally different experience. He knew that I was serious, and then I realized he actually could smile. He actually had the ability to smile, and so that was a fantastic experience. I studied with him for quite a while and use his method still to this day as far as teaching goes, and as everybody I think that ever studied with him would echo that sentiment.
Sure. You said something interesting about the knowing songs, and that's the thing that I've kind of learned since I've been here. It's now been about 9 years or whatever, that I had a lot of respect when I was at college for a lot of the technique kind of guys who could play so many riffs and whatever, and then I'd come out and hear these blues guys, and they'd play a lot of this, kind of the same riffs the whole night. These guys knew 300 songs.
Yeah.
And they're gigging all day, and I had some respect, especially vocally, they could just remember all these freaking words, singing.
Amazing, isn't it?
And I really had a lot of respect for one of the guys I really like in town is Dave Hayes. He's a blues guitar player.
I've sat in with him actually.
Yeah, and he's a good really guy, good player, and but I've always been really impressed when he runs a jam. He has 30 off the top of his head, okay, what are my 6 funk blues, I need a funk blues, that one, okay, here we go, and then he's just ready with all these tunes.
Those guys,
and
Paul Greenleaf's, those guys
Paul,
really are seasoned pros. They're really good.
Yeah, both have been on the show, done an interview, which is great, but I was really, I really respected the guys that could have that because, that, like you just said, you get out there and you're like, boy, I can play a whole bunch of good riffs, but I don't know any freaking songs.
Yeah.
Really,
And I think that's when I started doing that, then, it was like that ability to, like with John Elliott, to convert everything into numbers and be able to take any song and see it numerically. And then you start to realize, here's 2 different songs. This song's usually played in the key of C, this one's usually played in the key of F. And yet, if you reduce it down to numbers, they're going to a lot of the same places. The bridge is modulating up a fourth. It's just you start to see the similarity, and you don't. The keys become non-factor. You can just play in any key. And so it's sort of a paradox. It's like you could say that if you could learn one song, but learn it in every key, it would make learning the next 20 songs that much easier.
Wow.
I was,
and then that's a really, that's definitely an ear thing too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hearing all that, like especially with us doing the crap load of melodies, you know, just hearing interval, you know, I mean, and go down to F, okay, interval, you know,
Yeah.
it's if you can hear all of that, it's really good. So like with influences, I told you right before you started, a lot of times I'll hear guys and they'll play, you know, you can tell that they were really influenced by like Miles or something, and they'll have a trumpet player and they'll even be down with their trumpet, or you hear the guys that'll play Parker riffs all day. When I hear you solo, I'm hearing like rock riffs. I'm hearing like all sorts of stuff. You know, it's not just you know, that kind of
Right.
you know, kind of horn line stuff. And you already mentioned a little bit about kind of doing a lot of rock. Do you just kind of go off the cuff, like improv wise, or are you like purposefully going like, okay, I'm going to take this in a different place, this solo, or what are you thinking about when you improv?
That's a good question. I think, you know, the blues is an element that's there, you know, and that's kind of you know, I like to put that, you know, I like to have that reference point, but yeah, it's a good point. I think there's a lot of Kansas City influence in my playing.
Sure.
And that I got a chance to work with Jay McShann.
Wow.
Got a chance to work with Claude Fiddler Williams.
Yeah, wow.
And so those were big influences on me. And also when I came back from playing with Dry Jack, you know, I was playing in big bands. Like I said, I was almost having to switch gears, like going from this high-powered jazz rock fusion stuff to now Freddie Green, which at some points, like when I first came back, it was just like, I don't know how to keep my eyes open, stay awake. But eventually I started to, you know, get into that style, listen to Charlie Christian, listen to those things, and I just go, man, that Kansas City sound is really special, and and so I think one of the best compliments I ever got was I was playing with Karn in New York in Birdland, and the great drummer Louis Nash was the drummer that week with us, and he said, man, you know, he said, he looked at me, he smiled, he said, I can tell you're from Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. That's
that's
a great
good
compliment.
thing. That's a good thing.
That's funny.
Because everyone else is sort of trying to sound, you know, modern and sort of sounding the same, but I like the local flavor. I like, you know, being where you're from is that it was a really nice compliment.
Yeah, that's great. I know when I listen to when you listen to any of the drummers here in town that are pretty good, and you hear them doing, like, I think, like, this is my opinion, but I think that, like, kind of medium swing is our sound. I hear everybody playing that, just like that, and when I hear them, those drummers that can, you know, pull that way behind the beat, you know, I listen to that, and we get really we just get really used to playing like that, because everybody does here, and I bet that when people hear that from another country or another area of the country,
I think there's still something to be said for like for instance in Kansas City, a very common song to play is Moten Swing, you know, and that's. But I think if you went to the West Coast, they'd be going, "What's that?" You know, it would be there's a little bit of that, you know, local type flavor that we still have here.
Yeah.
Due to that incredible jazz era that existed.
Oh yeah. I'm going to turn this light on. Hold on a second. No. Okay, because it's about to get dark here. I know you teach a lot, and you were talking earlier about kind of knowing your fingerboard and stuff. And I when I came to your the camp, because I was a violin player, like they didn't know what to do with me, so I went with Doug Talley one day and Mike Ning another, and I went to yours one day, and you were talking to them about the box thing, and how I think what I remember your message being is that, like, a lot of people set their box and then they think they know what they're doing, you know, and then I think you were trying to encourage them, like you were saying earlier, to not just kind of know your cowboy chords and you're staying right here, but you know, like 10 different G's, all over the place. And I think you were talking about when you figure out the box, it gets easy, but you want to kind of move out of it. You know, you want to be able to kind of move out of it.
I use a term that I came up with that is capo mentality.
Capo mentality, yeah.
And
right, where you just
capo mentality is like there's no capo involved, but when you learn a scale fingering, and then you just automatically know that if I just move that fingering up, if I know the first note, then I'm good to go. Of course, that's not going to be productive in the long run, because you want to know what you're playing and why you're playing it, so you can break away from that and discover new fingerings and you know, more or less conquer the neck. And so I use the term capo mentality, but I also believe you're playing a guitar, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. You've got this great ability to have one thing that will work, but just make sure you're thinking the spelling. Make yourself say the notes. So when I think about it like that, it's almost like the fingering. You know, that's a given. Okay, so that's like a laser pointer telling you where to play. It was like, okay, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, major scale across the neck. Now just go ahead and say, okay, what am I playing? I'm playing an A major scale, you know, then how many sharps, right? And A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Make yourself say the notes so that you're now, the fingering is there, that's a given, but just don't let that be the end of it.
Sure, yeah. And the one question that I had too was there when you have, because you're doing a lot of college now, or you have been doing college, right? So you're getting that 18, 20-year-old kind of players, a lot of them. Is there something that you get that is sort of like a thing that the students will do, or a what's the word? Like a ability level that you're getting typically that you kind of do a lot in your teaching, or is there something that's like typical, like problems that your students tend to? I'm
teaching at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and I really like teaching there a lot because actually it's like a wide range. I get people that I've worked with one person there that teaches, and he'll study guitar for a year. Then I say I'm going to play mandolin. So we work with mandolin, and I'm looking at it from his the tuning and all that. So I get a wide variety. I get everything from beginners to occasionally I'll get somebody like a while back I had Jamie Anderson, very fine guitarist, and he was just like picked up on things so quickly, so fast. Adam Schlossman was a student of mine at UMKC, another fantastic guitar player that just was, I was just trying to, what do I come up with? What do I do now? So that can be challenging, Matt Hopper was also a student. So I've seen,
and Matt's
along with Danny Embry, we've had, we watched these guys come along and become great players. It's been exciting to be a part of that process,
That's great.
And, but yeah, it's an interesting process. Yeah, it varies, depends on the person, but for the most part, it kind of always goes back to the John Elliott system of working that and
Sure. Yeah. And like I know when I was at Wichita State, our teachers in the classical kind of era, or in the classical mode, they were, just technique all day. Let's learn a tune, and here's your posture, and so they had a lot of technical stuff. But I saw a lot of the like guitar teachers and some of the non-classical teachers, they had a totally different kinds of students coming to them, because all of us had rolled through orchestra hard and taken a lot of private lessons, but they got a lot of kids that have maybe done a lot of it on their own, and self-taught. And so the one guy they had down there was more of like almost a life coach, and I think that he possibly got a lot of kids that were kind of rockers and maybe even maybe even a little bit of potheads, and so they
Sure.
needed some, a little bit more direction than a lot of us because we were all, pretty
Sure.
studious and that kind of thing. And so,
Right.
do you tend to talk a lot about like the technique box, that kind of stuff, or do you tend to, because he was almost, I had another friend of mine that probably needed the technique, but he just kind of gave her life coach kind of stuff of, I mean, he was looking around, he's like, look at all the people gigging out here, name me the one who smokes pot every day.
Right.
It was stuff
Yeah.
like that he was kind of telling him. He's like, man, you could be good at this. It has nothing to do with music though for you.
Right.
I mean, he was.
Right.
He was
No, that's
do you like tend to have to do that a lot, or are your guys kind of looking for the technique, or like, any thoughts on that?
I don't really have a
Mm-hmm.
a good answer for that. It's just everybody's different, and but I think that's a good point. Like what one person maybe requires is not so much, like just like talking to them about, you're doing too much, too much. This is not good for you, and
Or laziness, or whatever,
yeah. And I think too. I think everyone's looking. I think especially if you're teaching on the college level, you realize that these people are pretty serious. They want to do this for a living, and then that's all of our concern. Then is how do you do that?
Yeah.
Because that's the bottom line, is that it's really. I mean, I get into the ivory tower stuff. I love talking about the modes,
Right.
all the modes, melodic minor, harmonic minor,
Yeah.
harmonic major. So I could geek out on that stuff all day long. But I think there's also at some point you got to think, well, how do you make a living doing
Right.
this? Because that's another thing. It's like so finding your voice, finding your path, and it's different, right? It's all different because the business is changing all the time too. So there's so much of that, and I had the same dilemmas.
Sure.
When I was young,
Yeah.
I was like, well, I had two role models which were pretty amazing. One was Pat Metheny, who when I found out that Pat Metheny was living in Lee Summit and was this phenom
Right.
on the rise, and so I kind of always admired Pat, greatly, because I watched his career from the very beginning.
Sure.
When he was 15, I heard him the first time, and then of course he became a jazz superstar. Just a amazing career. So I would look at that and say, maybe that's my path. Maybe that's my path too.
Yeah.
But when I went to Utah that first year, there was a guy that was the same age as Pat. I was 18 and he was 17, but he got out of high school early, took his GED, came to Utah early to get a jump. He wanted to get things going, and his name was Tim May, and he was like the kind of like, in a way, the polar opposite of Pat. I mean, he could play jazz. He was a good player, and he probably could if he had gone into that. But Tim was. His father was a bass player, Dave May, I believe is his name, in Ohio. And when Tim was growing up, they'd have jam sessions in the house, and Tim would say, "Dan, I want a guitar. I want to play the guitar so bad." No, I'm not going to. No. He didn't want him to become a musician. He was doing all he could, and finally, Tim kept begging, and finally, Dave May said, "Tim, I'll get you a guitar under one condition: that you train yourself to become a top studio player. You learn to read lights out." And so Tim made the promise, and Tim, when I was at Utah, he was already on that path. I got to play in a big band with him, which was unusual because it was two guitars, but it was a very experimental big band, and Ladd McIntosh was the conductor, and Ladd was sort of like, Don Ellis, the trumpet player, and that kind of, we were doing odd times thing.
Yeah.
Really wild stuff. We had a synthesizer in the band, and this is 1970,
Oh, yeah.
71.
Right when they came out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, it was actually somebody made it.
Oh,
Somebody
wow.
there at the school was a genius, and he made he made like a mini, like a homemade mode.
So that was a pretty different,
Oh, it was unbelievable.
different band.
But Tim could read anything. He could just, he just, and so he wound up going to L.A. and everybody's heard him. Everybody's heard him because he's been on countless records. But probably not anybody seen the movie Back to the Future, and where Michael J. Fox starts, doing all the. Well, that's Tim. Actually,
Wow.
That's Tim playing that.
Wow.
And they said, brought him in and said, Tim, can you do some Van Halen?
Yeah.
So he went down that path. I kind of thought maybe that was going to be my journey too, because I'd become a good reader. Playing saxophone helped me out in that regard in high school, and I got really good, and I actually followed in Pat's footsteps. Pat played a couple of summers at Starlight Theater in the orchestra pit when he was back home from Miami. And so when Pat quit that, and then I took his place, and I played with the Starlight Orchestra for a couple of years. So so I thought maybe that's it, But eventually I came back to Kansas City, and I thought, I was in the studio, and they wanted. Yeah, I just realized this stuff's passed me by. I'm listening. I'm listening to what I want to listen to, which is like Charlie Christian, Wes Montgomery. I'm listening to stuff I want to hear, and I just don't want to waste my time trying to keep up with. So that's when I kind of realized, no, that wasn't my path.
Sure. I have a problem with that too. I like a couple of guys when I first got into town, they kept saying the find your niche, and I thought that was annoying. It was an annoying piece of advice, and I didn't really quite understand what they meant. And I also didn't really want to understand too, because like I keep saying this, I mean, my kind of thing is I'm not really great at anything, but I can kind of go down to the foundation, play a couple tunes with them that I choose, sure. And then I can go play the country guys and go sight read a classical quartet for a wedding.
It might be your niche, the fact that you can do a lot of different things.
Maybe. But I realize that, that there's a lot of, if I'm going to go play a gig with any, buddy at, Green Lady, I need to know like 70 tunes and be able to hang with them when they drop them on me at the gig, and and I can't do that. So I was mad that they weren't calling me, but I'm like, but I can't do that. I kept reminding myself, I can't do what they need me to do. And
for me, I think ultimately what I found was my journey, my path, was that I wound up working with a lot of female singers in particular, male singers too, but working with Karen Allison and traveling with her, that led to some travel with Diane Shure, and of course still working with the unstoppable Marilyn May, who's 91 now, and still tearing it up. And so I've worked with a lot of vocalists, and that's kind of become sort of my calling card, I guess you might want to say. That I like that. I like the challenge of maybe doing what a piano player normally does. Support the note. Try to voice the chords to where the
But also backing somebody up too,
right?
Right, not being the main.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Ted Firth is this incredible piano player, works with Marilyn May a lot. He works with a lot of people, and he's a very fine jazz piano player. But he went to school, and he kind of thought that was his journey was going to be, playing jazz, and touring the world. And it's just kind of like all of a sudden, his path became, he started working with the vocalists, and he started doing arrangements for them, and pretty soon, he was just, he's the man. He's working all the time and doing very well. So it was like, it wasn't maybe what he set out to do, but it just kind of the doors opened, and
Sure.
and that's what took place.
Yeah. That's been a thing that been. It's hard for me to understand too. Is that a lot of times I've tried to figure out that I'm trying to force something, whatever the thing is in music or life or
Right.
whatever, and I have started to realize that sometimes it's just not been revealed to me yet, and it always will, because it always does, but I keep getting annoyed that I don't have the answer right now, but I mean, a lot of people have said that on the show, of they're like, I had no idea. The country thing for me was the thing that fell into my lap, of just playing country music. I'm like, please, I kind of felt that way about it, and then these guys kind of fell in my lap, and I tried it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm half decent at this, and it's not near as obnoxious as I thought it was gonna, and
Sure.
so that's something that it's hard to like, because you got to go find, you got to go do stuff. You can't just wait and
Right.
but like sometimes that's probably a good piece of advice. Of sometimes you can't 100% force it all the time. Sometimes stuff's just gonna fall in your lap, and you don't know when, and you got to be kind of ready for it, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and like, so with all of us that are like, 20 to 35-ish, we're trying to all kind of still figure out this business, and, being in, I'm sure there's 70-year-olds that will say, I'm still learning too, but, like, do you find that a lot of times at college, they'll say, like, what you need to do is just take like your junior year and basically practice all day, and you just take a year and just go for it, and hopefully a year that won't hurt you too bad, with having no job or whatever, and then you take a year in practice, and then you're like way ahead of everybody, and then you just kind of go for it.
I think that's great advice, because
Yeah.
I can clearly point out that in Charlie Parker's case, I mean, he of course, the legendary story is that he, we know now, looking back on it, hindsight, that he was a genius. That he was a genius, but when he first tried to sit in at an area club, and Joe Jones was playing the drums, and he started to try to. He was hearing this stuff in his head, but his fingers hadn't caught up to it.
Yeah.
So he tried to do some kind of like double time thing, and it didn't work out. And of course, the story is that Joe Jones took his cymbal off the stand and threw it at him. And said, "Get out of here!" And so, like the classic, getting sand thrown in your face.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So he used that as impetus to, he had that gig in the Ozarks, and I think he just practiced 10 hours a day, and just played the gig at night and just did nothing but practice, and he came out of that just, oh, wow.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it happened, in like you say, like if you could take a year off, and it's harder to do when you get older, right? Because bills and everything
Life,
else.
yeah.
It's good time to do it is when you're young.
Right.
And
Because
and Pat was the same way. Pat Metheny was he was just practicing all the time. Just still outworks everybody, I think.
Oh, sure, yeah. And then on the other side, I've heard a lot of people say that, even some people on the show have talked about this, that a lot of times when you get going like that, and you get to a good spot, and then you're sort of this, gun for hire, and then you get into quite a few music experiences that you don't really want to do, but you're sitting there, I need the gig, and so then sometimes people can get into a spot where it's not really fun anymore, because you're playing all the time, but you have to take these country gigs or whatever the thing is that you don't like. And so I've heard other people say that that's a dumb thing to do. You just need to go find a day job and then do it as much as you can do it, and let that be good enough. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, of course, but and you kind of got to be okay with whatever people want to do, I guess, but I don't know really what to think about that, because like the functional practical side goes, go get the day job, and just do as much as you can and find a band. And when you have that income, then you can go do exactly what you want to do because you're not hurting for money and like. But then the artist side of me goes, well, that's BS, right? I mean, you need to go do actual art and like, you know what I mean? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think I've just, you know, I guess the, you know, early on, you know, when I first got the gig with Greg Mize, you know, so I'm playing every night, and of course that was a great experience because I was playing 4 hours a night, and that was something I had never done before.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it was a huge. I learned a lot in 6 months, really, but I had a lot to learn too. So I mean, but I guess if I combine the you know the experience of Tim May and wanting to be a professional, wanting to be, you know, my goal was, you know, I want to be able to make a living playing music, and so it became kind of a simple goal because it was like, I wasn't following, you know, like doing what Pat Metheny did, which was you know, totally devoted to his art, you know, but I wasn't quite doing what Tim May did, which would go to L.A. and be in the studios all day long. I was sort of somewhere in the middle, you know, which is where I was kind of torn anyway.
Right.
But I think the main thing is I want to be a professional musician. I want to make my living playing music, and so, you know, that's been an interesting experience because I've seen things change. You know, what was the norm back in the mid-'70s is not the norm anymore. Yeah. So how do you deal with it? Because it's like a shifting thing. You know, it's like, you know, back in the mid-'70s, you know, rhythm section players anyway were playing 6 nights a week and had steady gigs. Right. And you'd be in a place sometimes. Pete, I would be in the same place for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
You know,
6 nights a week.
6 nights a week, yeah. So I mean,
it's unheard of now.
So that's gone. Yeah. That's gone. Yeah. And then in the '80s, you know, I moved back, and like I say, I at this point, I just wanted to be able to keep playing. I wanted to make my living as a musician. So then the '80s were just, you know, it was like the last of an era. It was like, you know, you had Tony DiPardo, Steve Miller, Vince Bilardo, guys, the old style contractors booking the country clubs, and I was working country clubs all the time. I mean, I'd maybe have kind of a fairly slow week, but then by Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm playing 2 or 3 jobs a day.
Right. Wow.
And you know. And one weekend from Friday morning till Sunday night, I had 9 gigs.
Yeah, wow.
I had like 3 gigs a day.
Wow.
And I was pretty burnt out after the gig on Sunday night. It kept going into overtime. And finally, I told Steve Miller, I said, you know, my hands locked up, and I said, Steve, I can't play anymore. You know, so I left the gig, and they're still playing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, so. I've seen that now, you know, the country clubs, you know, that's how I made my living. You know, and I really wasn't playing that much jazz. I mean, I mean, light jazz on the gig, you know.
Right.
I was learning a lot because, you know, I was playing with musicians like Herman Bell on saxophone, Carmel Jones on trumpet. These were regular
good bands. Yeah.
Yes, and so I learned a lot of tunes. I learned a lot of tunes, and it was really good for my development. But then, you know, just, you know, when that dried up, it just all of a sudden DJs took it all. They all became like DJs or cover bands, and it just dried up. And just about the time where, you know, you think I'd have to get a real job, about that time is when all of a sudden I was just. Oh, I guess, okay, like another epiphany. I just realized there's a fourth one. And that was when I was doing this country club work, and it was very mercenary. I was out there playing and
you know,
mercenary. But there was a great guitarist in town, Steve Cardenas, And he hadn't moved yet. He was going to eventually move to San Francisco, L.A., and now he's in New York, and doing quite well. And but Steve, we'd done some playing together, and Steve called me up and he said, "Man, you want to do a duo gig on Monday nights?" "Oh yeah, that sounds great, Steve. Yeah, I love that. I love playing with you." And he said, "Well, the good news is we've got the gig if we want it." "Okay, what's the bad news?" "It pays $5 a piece." And it was at the old Milton's, the original Milton's on Main Street. And Milton was gone by this point, but they were doing some music. It literally paid $5. And yeah, I'd been kind of a mercenary. After Dry Jack, and I came back, and it was just like, okay, what does the gig pay, and that kind of thing. And Spinach Festival, I don't care, I'll play it. But so I did that gig on Monday nights. If I didn't have another gig, I figured, I need to be back to doing what I love. This is important.
Yeah.
Sometimes money is not.
Right.
And so I played the gig, and we had a great rapport, had some great times playing together, and then Steve left, and he moved, and I kept doing the gig because then the guy moved into town was Bob Bowman. Started doing the gig with Bob.
Bob's great.
Oh yeah.
I love listening to Bob play.
And all of a sudden, I was starting to play jazz gigs. I didn't do it in the '80s. I was the mercenary, right? But I started doing that, and then Karn moved here, and I started doing gigs with Karn, and pretty soon, it's like I'm thinking, I'm making about the same amount of money, because by the time you get the tips and all that, and I'm playing music I want to play, and I'm playing with people I want to play with, and I thought to myself, go ahead, country clubs.
Right.
Go your merry way, because I was playing, and that led really to my career blossomed.
Yeah.
As far as I started, like I say, I toured with Karn, and I got a connection with Diane Shure, and then I started playing gigs around town, and we've had a really good, remarkable scene in Kansas City. I mean, we really have had a terrific run. I mean, it's amazing because you had, in the '80s, you had City Light in Waldo. And I hardly ever played there because, like I said, I was doing the country clubs. And they didn't use, it was a piano, they had a piano, so guitar wasn't likely to get called. But when that moved, and that closed, and then City Light became part of the Plaza 3, and I started playing down there with Bob Bowman and Todd Strait and Joe Cartwright. I had one night a week there with them, and then sometimes weekends.
Well, that'd be a good group right there.
Oh, it was incredible. And I thought, so I mean, I transitioned right from that to doing more clubs, more jazz, and thankfully, just when the City Light eventually it kind of changed, and it wasn't. But Jardines came along, became the big popular spot.
Right.
I played there a lot. Then, of course, they had their problems, and then that closed. And then, Broadway Jazz Club never really quite took off.
Green Lady's doing great.
But Green Lady is just killing it. Just doing great, doing fantastic, and I'm playing there every Saturday afternoon, 2:30 to 5:30, and with Gerald Spates on bass, sometimes Danny Embry on guitar, what's going on there is remarkable. I think Saturdays 7 bands between the Green Lady and the Black Dolphin next door, 7 bands in one day, and there's no cover charge. It's just it's
they're doing great. So, like, one thing that I'm always really fascinated is all the kind of psychology that goes into people's heads. And so I've heard a lot of people talk about how much is sort of the scene, like when they aren't getting gigs, whose fault is that? Both of us have had 100 to 1,000 conversations with different musicians about their opinion of that. About people, internet and TV has come out. Now there's just a lot of stuff to compete with, just entertainment-wise in the world. People talk about we're still getting paid 70s wages, and people don't know good music anymore, and the other musician, blah, 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 the club owner, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And I'm always really interested in people's perspective on that, because that kind of goes back to my question about, should I go for this thing, or do I need to just go get my day job, because everybody will say, like, making it as a musician, that's not a thing. They'll have this just really... this pessimistic view of, well, I'm only going to get 75 a gig, and I'm going to get literally 3 of them a month, so I'm in the gutter, apparently.
Right.
They'll just have this really negative view of the music scene and making it, and like, because I'll hear some people that want to, like, just drop it on the club owners all day. They're just crapping on them, just behind their
Right.
back and all that. And then I'll hear other guys be like, yeah, but you don't ever practice. And you don't have anything to give, and so the personal
Right.
responsibility kind of people will be like, yeah, but I didn't either, and I went and practiced, and I understood that maybe this needs to have a little bit more of an entertainment value to your band. You
Sure.
don't just get up there and just never go talk to the audience on break, and they go into
Right.
all this stuff that might help you build your brand and all.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about the kind of personal responsibility, or how much can you kind of throw at, this isn't 100% my fault if I don't, if my band isn't doing good, or like, do you have any opinions about that?
Well, yeah, it's a case-by-case basis, I guess. But I do believe that jazz is. I mean, there are those people out there that will think that jazz has to be just pure, and you can't entertain people. You're not supposed to entertain people. You're supposed to just, they're supposed to just recognize your brilliance, and right. And then I think back to the, some musicians that have had an influence on me, and Milt Abel, bassist, was tremendously entertaining, and I worked a lot with Tommy Ruskin. Tommy Ruskin was really entertaining. When played with him and Brahm down at the Majestic, and Tommy would do this thing where he'd go play on the bottle. The bottle's kind of hanging on the wall.
Walk around
the table, and of course we'd wind up with incredible tips.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so I think it's like, it's kind of an old school thing, but I think there's nothing wrong with entertaining, and I think if you can be good at what you do and entertain people to on top of that.
Right.
Now, there's some people that are very, very entertaining, some that are not, and they still are doing what they're doing, and still busy. So I'm not saying you have to, but I think it's one of those things that if you can find that connection with people, that to me, I like that. I like the fact that when you're playing music, you're actually playing to an audience. I really feed off of that.
Yeah.
I really feed off of that, and I love that. It's not. What I mean is, the audience is a big part of it. It's like they're part of the dynamic.
Right. Well, if you're walking in, because that's the thing, is that, like, the band I always bring up is Kiss. It's like the tongue and the lights and the
Right.
and the costumes and stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, sometimes you take all of that away, and I think they're sort of a kind of average band, but you go to the show and it's just it's just nuts, and it's great, but there's a lot, like you just said, there's kind of this attitude of, well, I'm not gonna do that, that's trash, I'm gonna go to my Berkeley School of Music and learn all my scales, and they're just supposed to bow down, to all my brilliance, and then they sit here and they don't want to do, they go like, well, I'm not gonna do that, well, this music scene, blah, blah, and then they start in with the complaining, and I'm like, well, yeah, but that's sort of what people want, and I don't know. I don't know how, I'm starting to, if you have the two sides, the artist side and the, kind of entertainer side, I think there is a middle, and there's a good balance, but I'm starting to understand why the entertainers do what they do. And, you know, I don't really know what to tell them, you know,
Yeah.
like, well, you guys aren't.
Well, like what we're doing right now, like at the Green Lady, I'll tell a story about a song. You know, I know a bunch of stories about, you know, some of the American Songbook and or, you know, just talk to the crowd. Just talk to the crowd and just, you know, it's I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that. So it's probably different for everybody, but I think one of my regrets is I never got down to see Les Paul in New York City when he was doing that Monday nights at where was it? Can't think of the name of the place. Anyway, but he was there. But he would, you know, half the night he was just telling stories. And you know the stories he had to tell were
probably
priceless,
just awesome,
and funny, and everything else. And so, you know, I think that's kind of like, you know, like sometimes think like that too, like, you know, but just you know, relate to people. You were saying about NBA?
Yeah, so with the NBA players, they were talking a lot about just being a professional. You know, walking in and watching. You know, what are these guys dressing like? What are they doing on their off time? What do they do? You know, it was less about the actual playing. It was more, what are you practicing?
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing on your off time, and not just seeing them. You know, when they're the star, you know, star on the court or whatever. And I wonder if that's another thing that a lot of young guys could get out of these. You know, and definitely between the sets. What are you doing? Are you sitting there talking to your drummer? Or are you going out and talking to your crowd? Are you know?
Yeah.
How do you come at the owner? How do you, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if that's another thing that young guys could kind of.
Sure,
We don't think to look. You know, we don't think to watch for that stuff. We're staring at his fingerboard.
Right.
You know, we don't see all the other stuff. You know, and I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I agree. So yeah, that you know, so that skill set. I mean, you could say, well, you know, how do you stay busy? What do you do? What do you tend to do? Like I said, for me, it was sort of finding that that working with vocalists was something I really, you know, thrived in doing and continue to. It's and like I say, the business is changing all the time, so it's really like, wow, you know, I mean, yeah, sometimes I think that's not a bad piece of advice. It's have a job during the day and keep your options open at night. At least until you can find out. I know, I think Matt Hopper was working for
UPS, for a long time.
For a long time, and I don't think he is anymore.
Well, he probably doesn't have to anymore now.
He's working so much.
But that's how he was easily able to handle all of this stuff. You know, at least bills and whatever.
So I mean, there's a different road, a different path, and some people like to teach. So I mean, a lot of guitar players they'll get a thriving teaching thing going on, and that's something that is another option.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
That can be your day job, you know, sort of.
Exactly.
And that usually doesn't screw you over for a Friday and Saturday ever.
Right.
You know,
right.
So you can
Precisely.
kind of, do you have one more last question for you? Do you have one just kind of gig that you'll never forget, or that went absolutely horrendous, that is hilarious now, or great, or bad? Or
I do. I've got a doozy. As Hazel would say on that old TV show.
Yeah.
Doozy. Anyway, I was actually this was a 3-gig day, and each gig was just it was a trifecta. So the first gig I was with Mike Perriman, a very good friend, in his memory. He was a wonderful musician and taught himself to play the clarinet and played the drums with Steve Miller a lot. But we started doing these duo gigs, and Mike and I got a call from the Parks Department to go and play at the Kansas City Zoo. And Mike, clarinet, I had my little battery-powered amp that I could carry along. And so we're strolling around the zoo playing, which is kind of ridiculous. We're first off, we look like the Blues Brothers because we're wearing
Right.
a black jacket, white shirt, and black pants because we have to go straight from there to a country club game. So it's our make believe tuxedo, and without the tie.
Playing to giraffes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at one point we go into the petting zoo, and Mike, occasionally, like I say, self-taught. Occasionally he'd hit a clam on the clarinet. It would sound like he's honking or something, like a real abrasive sound. Which there was a goose that came up and bit him on the ass. After probably thought it was a rival.
Yeah.
So we were laughing at that, and we finally let's go over by the ape house. They had that modern looking structure, and so there's a moat, and then the chimpanzees were out on their patio, and we don't know who's looking at who, but there was a lot of people there. So we go over there, and we're playing something really stupid, like okay, let's play Hello Dolly.
Yeah.
Hello Dolly. Well, hello Dolly. So this chimp, we're playing music, and this chimp looks over at us, and he's like looking like this, and he starts taking his arm, and he's like, I'm making these noises, and he picks up some chimp dung, and throws it, and throws it over the moat, towards us, and almost hit us, and of course the crowd's all scattering,
Yeah, right.
and we're at this point we're laughing so hard, I mean, we're just like music critics, and
he didn't like that song. He was not happy with that song.
Hello Dolly was not flying. And so we go from that gig, and I go to the next, they're both playing on the next gig, except Mike's going to be playing the drums. And it's a small band. And it's a Steve Miller job. And it's a Saturday afternoon wedding. I don't know if you've ever played a Saturday afternoon wedding, but those are nice. Those are easy because people don't get too wild.
Yeah.
It's more conservative. So I'm thinking, we'll be in air conditioning. Steve will tip the waiter to bring coffee and water service for the band. It's no brainer. I could play this gig in my sleep.
Yeah.
So I get there and I notice there's a chair for Carmel Jones. There's a chair for Herman Bell, and there's another chair. And I'm saying, what? Who else is on this gig? And it was Don Lipovac, incredible accordion player. Well, what? Yeah, but why is he here? This is kind of like a Greek wedding, so they're going to want to hear some mazurkas. They're going to want to hear some Greek music, and Don could do that stuff. He could do any ethnic, so he could do that. So I'm thinking, okay, all right, we'll do like 15 to 20 minutes, like a Jewish wedding, where you play the horas for a little bit. Everyone gets worn out, and then you go back to New York, and all that stuff. Right. So piece of cake. Wrong. It was a 3 or 4 hour gig. I can't remember, but it was Steve booked us as an authentic Greek band. We didn't play New York.
Yeah,
we didn't say anything but Greek music.
Wow.
And I didn't know any of it.
Sure.
And I didn't even know what meter we were in.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm looking at Greg Whitfield, and we're like trying to. Don's just pumping away. He's just playing like he's a machine. And we're like 1 2 1 2 1 2, and it's just all these odd times, and I just got done with that gig. I just felt like I'd been put through a ringer. It was just like there was nothing easy about it.
Yeah, sure.
All. Steve booked it as a Greek band.
And that's Blues Brothers,
That's
right?
all we played. All we played was Greek music.
Sure.
I didn't even know the song. I didn't know any of the titles.
Yeah.
Then the last gig of the day was on the back of a hay wagon out in the middle of nowhere. Dave Riggs, which is another subject. That's like we could do a whole radio show on that. But anyway, he had booked this singer that was kind of like an Elvis imitator, somewhat, not really, but he was doing kind of a Vegas. And we're on the back of a hay wagon. The generator's louder than we are. There's nobody there. The people are like way far away, and it was just like one of the silliest gigs that we've ever played. It was all on the same day.
Yeah,
and
wow.
I went home, and my wife said, "What's wrong with you?" I was just staring at the wall for like 2 hours. Almost catatonic.
That is funny. But yeah, that is really a funny moment where you like the regular people don't understand, you know, when you show up and they just like throw stuff at you like right now, and you just deal with it. Yeah, and that's why we practice. Obviously, you practice to be able to get up there and not fall on your face. You just kind of stumble to the ground, you know. But that's funny. I mean, all of us have had not quite that extreme, but you know, similar moments where people throw you stuff, and you're just like, you got to deal with it.
The fact this was all in one day was just mind-boggling.
And we've also all had the gigs, you know, where it's just a horrendous setup. You know, like you said, like they're all like, I mean, literally 500 feet away.
Yeah.
Why are we standing here? You know, like and
right.
to deal with those too.
We're playing our like we're playing like there's people there, but there were nobody was there. We were supposed to be playing, so we were playing.
Right.
But
that's crazy. Yeah, that's a crazy day.
That was quite a day. Yeah, that was quite a day.
Well, that's cool, man. Well, definitely, like I said, I wanted to kind of speaking for the rest of Kansas City, we all, you know, love listening to you play and love the. It seems like recently I saw a Facebook thing with a la Mode. I think you were playing with a la Mode or something.
I just played with them at Johnny's Jazz Club, which is another place that's north of the river.
Right.
And it just
we just heard Lonnie there last night. Yeah, Lonnie McFadden.
It's a great venue, and they're really supporting live music with the Johnny's, and also the Longview is so you know, really and you know, airplane. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Clayton is a former student at UMKC, and
good player.
They're really good. They have so much energy and so much fun, and they're very entertaining. Very entertaining. It's just, you know, so and that's been great. Jessica's been booking Chaz on the plaza, and that's been a real nice. I play there quite a bit, and so it's.
Do you like playing with younger guys? Because I see Lonnie doing that too. Like the people who he books are, you know, Andrew Ouellette, you know, some of these younger. And I think I asked him on the show, you know, like, is there a reason why you do that? He's like, well, one, they're good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have them on just because they're young, just because I want to give back or whatever. You know, he's like, they're good, you know. But I think that he does kind of feel that, you know, he could go get a Bob Bowman or somebody, you know, somebody who's really, you know, well known but I think he enjoys giving, you know, helping out a little bit and giving an opportunity. I mean, you probably, obviously as a teacher, you kind of feel that way.
Oh yeah, and plus I think there's, you know, also there's something to be said for youthful energy. There's something about, of course, there's the wisdom of an older player, but then there's that youthful energy, and we learn from each other, I think, in that regard, you know.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And we've got a lot of great young players. I mean, we're really blessed with some incredible talent here in Kansas City, and everybody seems to be working. It just seems like, you know. There's quite a few places to play. I hope that continues because this is a good time period. This is a very good time period we're in right now, and I've seen it. You know, I've seen, like I say, back in the 70s. You know, there was 6 night-a-week gigs. That's the good news. Yeah. Now the bad news is they really weren't jazz gigs.
Right.
You know, I mean, even though we're talking about jazz players like Tommy Ruskin and Pete I and John Elliott, those gigs were a lot more commercial back then. I mean, you were playing for people that were dancing, and you were having to play the songs that were popular on the radio, and so there was really, if you wanted to hear real jazz, you had to go on to the east side of town. Yeah, and you'd go to these places where, you know, Tommy Ruskin told me he went into one night, and you know, and they called it the Chitlin Circuit. That's what they called it. It was like there were these clubs that would be in these different cities, but bands would come through, and Tommy had never heard of this guitar player, and he went in to hear him, young guy, and blew him away. He called up Julie, And from the payphone, he said, "Julie, check this guitar player out." He's holding the payphone in the
Yeah.
air. It was George Benson, and he was just starting to tour. He was just getting his band out on the road. Cookbook had just come out, and so it's different now because there's not so much jazz on the east side that there used to be, but you have places like Green Lady, you have Chaz on the Plaza, you have the B&B theaters, you know, and you have a lot of other places that are doing
Sure.
jazz oriented stuff. So it's changed, you know, but it's good.
Yeah.
You know, they're not the 6 night a week gig, you know, except for maybe Gaslight Grill with Lynn Zimmer, but
Majestic as
Majestic Steakhouse is a steady weekend gig for Brahm,
yeah.
you know, and that's great. And and then basically what I do is I kind of piece my calendar together. I'll have like second Tuesday with Brian Hicks at Chaz. I'll have John Blagan on clarinet. We have the last Tuesday of the month at Chaz. I'll do the third Monday of the month with Dan Bliss, and then Emily Frost will sing the second Friday, I think, of the month with Brian Hicks. So I get and then you just got to piece it together.
Sure.
So it's not in one spot, so to speak.
You and Dan together. I've heard you and Dan together. You guys are all over the place. That's really fun.
A lot of fun over the That's a lot of fun to work with him and
that's great, man. Well, again, thanks for everything. Keep it up, and everybody come out and hear Rod wherever the heck you're at. All over the place. Playing, but really enjoy hearing you play always, man.
Oh, thank you.
And Rod Fleeman.
Thank you.
Thanks
Rob.
for coming on.
You bet. Thank you.
Get out of here. See you guys next time.